So I was invited to this group here by Label Greenbaum.
Rebbe.
But I want to talk a little bit about his grandfather, but before that about his father, who's sitting right across me. Yossi is a childhood friend of mine. Your father is a childhood friend of mine, your employer, whatever. We grew up in Borough Park together.
Went to Simpson.
And we went to the same shul, Rabbi Simpson shul. And then we went to yeshiva in Morristown together. And that's a discussion for itself. A lot to say, a lot of memories, a lot of very important things. And that's what I want to get to. Talk about how do you develop someone's story? How do you develop someone's story? In this case, it's going to be about the senior Greenbaum, Rebbe Mendel, the Soldat, as the Rebbe called him. Rebbe Mendel, the soldier, who I personally knew and spent time with in Florida, and also, I don't know if you remember, but also at the Mountain Lodge. And I want to begin with something that I saw, that I always repeat in all of my lectures and talks and fabrengens, that Mendel did that really left an impression. And I want you to think of it not in a political way, because it is going to board on politics. And I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm coming from a different perspective. But let me get right to the story. So it's Shabbos afternoon in Mountain Lodge, Shabbos after Kiddush. There's 150 people sitting there. I remember Shlomo Zarchi was there, the Zarchis, and Shavilam, Olav Sholem, and many other, people who, respectable people, knowledgeable people, Chassidim, B'nai Torah, really people who have a lot of information. And then people are making Kiddush. I happen to end up sitting next to Rebbe Mendel because of my kinship and relationship with Yossi. And I don't think Yossi was sitting next to us, but I was sitting next to him. And I see him making Kiddush, and he makes on a large cup of scotch. Okay? And he's not a youngster. He's not, this must have been about 25 years ago. A full cup of scotch. And after he makes Kiddush, and he's not fathomed, and no signs of intoxication, shikras, he just makes Kiddush and downs it, and and then he gets up in front of 150 people. And this is, Mendel Greenbaum, who, was a plumber, he was no rabbi, he was no Talmud Chacham that was giving shiurim. And I want to show you what he does. So he gets up like this, wearing his kapota, and he goes like this. He had a fist 5 times my size.
Oh, wow.
And he goes, Yechi!
Yechi.
Adonenu!
Adonenu.
It didn't say like a Lubavitcher, Adonenu. Adonenu. Rabbeinu. Morenu. Whatever the words are. Melech. Hamoshiach. Not Hamoshiach. Hamoshiach. Le'olam v'olam. That's the way I remember it.
Amen.
And I thought that there was some real anti-Mashiachism sitting in that Fabrengen, those that knew Mountain Lodge 25 years ago, or both, but there were some very, very outspoken individuals, and I looked at them, and they're all looking at Mendel, and they don't say a word. They don't say a word!
Oh, wow.
And it's not that they were scared of him. When he said that Yechi Adonenu, to me, you know what he was saying?
It's good.
Rebbe, I love you. That's what he was saying. I don't even know if he knew the details of Yechi Adonenu, Malkeinu, Rabbeinu, Melech, all the Torahs and explanations that probably some of these rabbis can get on the board here probably shared or know to share. He knew one thing, that this Rebbe, this Lubavitcher Rebbe, by him is reality. And My point is, to you guys, it's not such a big chiddush because you're all Lubavitchers. But when I speak outside, and people constantly, still till today, I was at a Shabbaton in Long Beach, New York, in a Young Israel this past summer. And I was bombarded with questions after I spoke about Mashiach and Lubavitch and all that. So this is an ongoing issue, right? So the sincerity of a person, in this case a chassid, with his Rebbe transcends, the politics. Of course, you could take it in a political way. But if you're looking for truth, and we should be looking for emes, then you see that here is a person who, for whatever reason, whether he was told he has to say this, or whether he really believes he has to say it, tzegeit b'nishton, as we say in Yiddish, I don't care. What I care is to see a sincere heart, a genuine heart. And this brings us back to who he was. He was born in 1928 and he was raised in East New York. And from there, he moved on. He learned in yeshivas in Chaim Berlin first. After Chaim Berlin, I think he went to Torah Vadas at some point. And he met, I think, the Hechts, J.J. Hecht, Elia Gross, and somehow he transfers to Lubavitch Yeshiva. I wish I would have had more time and his mind would have been clearer, because the main interview came in Florida when he was already a kind of stroke patient, semi-stroke patient, and we sat for hours and we spoke, and he would get up, and I said, Mendel, no, I'm going to go get it. It was hard for him to walk. No. And he would go get in, get me a drink, and get me a soda, get me this, whatever. And then, so he tells me that the story, which I would assume some of you know, it's definitely family, but it's worth repeating to the others. He was drafted to go to the war, right? He was supposed to go to Korea. He had friends that were going to Germany. He asks the Rebbe, he had a relationship with the Rebbe from the 1940s when the Rebbe was the Ramash. And he also told me the first time he saw the Rebbe, which maybe I'll get to soon, he remembered it. He remembered the first time he saw the Rebbe. Shortly after the Rebbe came in June of 1941. Anyway, he says to the Rebbe, it'll be dangerous. Let me go to... let me go to Germany, right? Let me go to Germany. Was it the right?
What happened was he asked the Rebbe to go to dodge the draft.
Right.
So the Rebbe asked him, "How are you going to dodge the draft?" He said, "Very simple. I'm going to jump on a Greyhound bus, go into Canada. No one will find me for years. And I'll go to yeshiva there." That's what.
Anyway, what he told me was something about Germany and Korea. That certain friends went here, some friends there. So he asked the Rebbe to switch because it was safer, and the Rebbe said no.
Stay where you are.
Stay where you are. A few weeks go by, and he says again to the Rebbe, he said, stay where you are. I think 2 or 3 times the Rebbe didn't let him change. And was those that went to, I think it was Germany, got bombed and killed, and he went to Korea and he made it. Das Maleng is up. He told me this himself. This is not, and he's talking about in 1952, in the early 50s. Another thing he told me was, and this in Chabad is a famous thing, but it's worth repeating. He had furlough. He had a weekend off. So his friend says to him, "You want to hop on a plane and go to New York?" Friend wasn't. I don't think he was any Jewish. He's going to go party at the Broadway. Tonight's New Year's. They go out in town. He says he has an opportunity to go see the Rebbe, be by the Fabrengen. So they go on a cargo plane. He described to me how there was no seats, they were laying on the floor with the schmutz, a ganze Meise. They get to New York. He's in 770 for Shabbos in Crown Heights. The Rebbe tells him by the Fabrengen to say L'chaim. And the Rebbe goes like this. I don't know if those that remember, most of the younger, but Yosef probably remembers, if the Rebbe went like this, he means he wants you to say on a cup like this, L'chaim. He could hold his drink, Chaim. The Rebbe goes again, I guess, 7 times. The Rebbe tells him to say l'chaim on a cup of vodka. Label, you know this story? Vaguely. This is what he told me. After 7 times, he's like out of it. I mean, 7 cups. And he wonders to himself, and everyone's wondering, 7 times the Rebbe would say Emmanuel Shochad, remember the Rebbe would say L'chaim, another one say L'chaim once, maybe sometimes twice, 7 times. It's unheard of. He comes back, and he had an anti-Semitic, he told me, general. I forget his name. Or maybe he never told me his name. I didn't write it down, so he probably didn't tell me his name. And the guy says, I don't know what it is, Greenbaum. Greenbaum, we're going to go out for drinks, let's go. And he really, he bothered him. They go into the bar, the tavern, and they start drinking. And he says, this is what we're doing tonight. You have to match me drink for drink. Yes, you correct me if I'm wrong. Drink for drink. And they start drinking and drinking and drinking. 4, 5, 6. And the general, and now the general is, and Mendel is, the drink number 7 that the general picked up and he drank, he collapsed and he died on the spot. Drink number 7. How many cups did the Rebbe tell him, L'chaim by Fabrengen? 7 glazer, 7 cups. That happened. Okay? Now, what is it about him? So, the Rebbe is the one that coined the name, I think the only one in Lubavitch, Mendel the Soldat, Mendel the soldier, because he was a soldier in the Korean army, but it's a lot deeper than that. A soldier has what we call in Chassidus, in the Torah, Kabbalah soil. He accepts. He does. He doesn't deviate. From what I know, this is the type of person he was. Very simple. But by him, the Rebbe, I've met a lot of people. I've interviewed a lot of people. And his pashtus, his sincerity and simplicity of his love for the Rebbe, I haven't seen. All these rabbis, we're all rabbis, Rabbanim, Mashpiyim, in other words, our conditioning of a connection to a tzaddik is like, I understand his Maimorim, I understand his Sichas, I like his Chesed. This is another thing that I'm going to be bringing in Montreal in 2 weeks, and this is one of the things. I was once bringing Yerushalayim and Heichel Menachem. There was a lot of Gerach Hasidim there, and they start with me about Mashiach. So I turn to them and I say this. I don't want you to believe that my Rebbe is Mashiach. I have a question for you. Do you believe that your Rebbe is Mashiach? And they said, you know what? No. That's my question. In other words, but in your doctrine of Hasidism, this is not important. In our doctrine, it is very important. Now you can argue who is the Mashiach and all that, but the concept that Mashiach is a reality should be part of the Hasidic mindset. So what am I saying? The Rebbe calling him Mendel the Soldat means he is a soldier, he is a fighter, he is a believer. And that's very important. That's something that we can all and need to identify and understand. Not, again, I see this as a young man, you're not a Lubavitcher. Not about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, about whoever your Rebbe is, or whoever your Gadol is, your Tzaddik. The Sfardim have their Tzaddikim, no problem. The question is, and what if your Rebbe or your Tzaddik doesn't do something that you like? What do you do? So let me tell you, I have a guy in Borough Park in our shul. He was a Biyaner Chassid. He felt the Biyaner Rebbe didn't treat his daughter right, so he changes from the Biyaner Rebbe and now becomes a Lubavitcher. Since when does a Rebbe have to correspond to your liking? famous mice with Shmuel Derari, the chassid of the Rebbe Marash, the Rashab, right? The Rebbe tells him to invest in the lumber business, going down the river, and what happens?
Down the river.
And went down the river, Hafleitzkeva, and everything got lost, destroyed. And they say, Shmuel, you still believe in the Rebbe? He says, Ot erst glebechem Rebbe. I now just begin to believe in the Rebbe. Until now, he was a Rebbe that fit my agenda. That's a Rebbe. And I believe, it seems to me that the Mendel, Yoseda, was a Yid who, what are people going to say? Why did the people who politically didn't like that agenda, Yechia Denenu, why were they quiet? And why were they looking? And why? You know why? Because it came from the heart. And when something comes from your heart, it talks loud and clear. Another story that Mendel told me, and I think he said he heard it from you, Yossi, but it's an important story. Not going to say names because it's very personal, very private. Someone who was close to the Rebbe had Yechidus, and he had a difficulty in Parnasa. He went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, go out and ask Mendel Greenbaum. I mean, that itself also is like, to me, like, what? The Rebbe didn't say go to a rabbi, a rav, a mashpia. Go ask Mendel Greenbaum what business you should do to have parnasa. He goes out, and he says, and Mendel says to him, you should go into the shoe business. So he says, that Mendel, they knew each other, that Mendel, I don't know anything about shoes, right? He says, well, you'll find out. Everyone needs shoes. How can you not make money in the shoe business? Goes back into the Rebbe, this person, and he says to the Rebbe, he told me something ridiculous to go into the shoe business. I know nothing about the shoe business. And he goes out without going into details because of privacy. He had a hard life, a very hard life. When the Rebbe tells you something, whether it's through Mendel Greenbaum or Yankel Todris or him or her, listen. And this is relevant today. Even though we don't see or hear, at least I don't hear and see the Rebbe, right, physically, but the reality of who he is and his teachings and his hadracha is real. So you write into the Rebbe, you go to the oil, you go to 770, whatever your method of connection is, and I'm not telling you what it should be, but whatever that is, are you ready to listen? Are we ready to listen? I know I'm not. I'm not always willing to listen because I'm not a real believer. A real believer listens and doesn't, like I said before, a Rebbe to him is not what he can do for me, it's what I can do for him. So, when the Rebbe tells you to go to Mendel Greenbaum to ask him for advice what parnasa you should go into, and he tells you to go into the shoe business, fool! That means the Rebbe's telling you that. You don't know about shoes? So you don't know about shoes, you learn about shoes. So, I heard these things from him. I'm sharing things I heard from him that left an indelible impression. This is, we're talking about now 15 years ago. The chesed, the little that I know, and Yossi knows a lot more, but I forget the name. He had this person who used to I think, live in your basement, or I forget who it was. He used to always hang out. What was his name?
Matcha Klein.
Matcha Klein.
Matcha Klein. That one in Simpsons.
Yeah. Small guy.
Balkair.
It's also like, I have a house. I'm saying, do I let people in? There's something that there's to learn from. Look, here is not this Rav, not this Mashpia, not this Rabbi, a simple Yid, and look at his chesed. Look at how, and here I am, with all, everything I do, And I don't have that chesed. So what's happening? What's going on? In other words,
What was the chesed with Mordechai?
He lived in his house.
he lived in his house
For 40 years.
for 40
As
years.
soon as he got married, he moved upstairs and he never left.
You hear that? You know, and what did
He would
your
come
grandmother
down.
say? I have no idea,
He
but
learned with us. He what do you call it? My wife would
40
cook.
years he lived in the house.
He just lived there.
Yeah.
He never left.
yeah, no, fine.
And then later, when my parents moved to Crown Heights, he moved by my brother Leiber.
Yeah.
He always stayed.
Yeah.
He
So-
was a Yassam from the war. It was a,
Oh, it was the Yosef from the war. I didn't know.
he was a little kid when he left, when he was in the war.
So, when we talk about a person's life, and this is the next, maybe final part of this talk, it's more of a fabrengen, not a shir. I wanted to give a shir, but he's able to talk about my grandfather. So, we're not recording our grandparents' parents' information. I've been, over the last 5 years, doing, one of the things I do is oral history, family oral history, not just about the Rebbe, about your family. Who is your family? You know, there was a Jew, 97, who just passed away, Shmuel Plotkin, he just passed away. Thank God I was able to convince our Chaver, Rabbi Plotkin, to have me do this interviews with him, 8 to 10 hours on camera. That belongs to the family. It doesn't go out to the public. It's theirs. I'm commissioned to do it. And the family has gems. And what they do with it is a different story. The point is, how many people don't we have on camera? Someone said here they come from the Raskins. And I want to tell you something. There's a difference between having a granddaughter, a grandson, because there's certain things that you can't ask them, and I can. Because I ask all kinds of questions. And there's someone else who I did this in about 15 hours in Crown Heights in the last 2 years. And then I said to him, because it's a lot of mental work, this isn't just recording. I'm listening. After I say to him, I think I have to take something out. He says, what do you have to take out? I said, when you mentioned one of your children, your nose went up. And when you mentioned another child, your nose went to the right. I don't think I want them to see that. In other words, you're showing favoritism to one over the other. No good. We're taking that out. When he heard, he didn't even realize. And he said, Chaim, thank you very much. We took it out. The point is that people have history. Now, I just brought this as an example. My father, who Yossi kind of grew up with, knows very well. My father was born in Romania 88 years ago, thank God. You know, he comes to the early minyan, 770. He's the show at the 7 o'clock minyan, right, in the 770. But the point is like this. A lot of the stuff I heard over the years, because my father is a talker, a big talker, you know, and he says everything. But nevertheless, to put together real information, you need dates, you need years, you need to ask questions. You can't just a general question. And now, in his older age, when I ask him questions, he gets real nervous because he's 88 years old and lost his patience, right? But you need to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you don't get answers. This is what every one of you should make sure that your parents and your grandparents, for your own family. I mean, this is out in the public for everyone, but the point is, I'm not soliciting you. I'm sharing with you something that makes me very sad all over. I talk about this all over. People are going to their graves with the information. Mamish. I don't want to say who, but another older person in this community in Crown Heights. I begged his kids, get him to speak. And I say, if you let me do this, I will get gems out of you because he's not going to tell you. So, for example, I saw him once, and we're talking, and he says to me, yeah, I remember when I was 11 years old, I almost killed a guy, and together next to me was Reitzes, because Reitzes went to the mikveh in a pond, this is in Russia, and he had to take off all his clothes, Sarangin in the mikveh, and there were goyim, and they were making fun, and all. And I saw this, and I almost killed him. Now, it's stupid, right? But it's not stupid. Because for a writer, every little story points to a certain narrative. And this is what you need to take out. That's how a book becomes interesting. That's how a story becomes interesting. Not through the great things, the seven L'chaims with the Rebbe. It's a fascinating story. But then there's the details, everyday life. How did the Mendel Dalfin as a stroke patient Shabbos and Labushes in the house in Miami? Right? Who's thinking about that? I am. What side did he go into? What side did he come out from? See, so only when you do oral history do you get a chance to get into it. And I'll tell you something. What I see from all the different people that I did this with over the last 2-3 years, they love it. First, they're like ambivalent, and then when we start talking, and they just, I'm not going to say they say everything, because they don't, and they shouldn't, but they say a lot. They say a lot more than the average person. So my message, I guess, today is, besides, the speaking about Mendel, which is a schus, the Rebbe calls him Mendel Soldat. To me, that's big stuff. That's big stuff. But besides that, it's the importance of getting your story out and maybe writing a diary, keeping a diary. Do you guys keep a diary? I keep a diary to 25 years. Now, I'm not going to say I'm perfect. There's many days I don't write, but how about keeping a little diary? You think, what's wrong to keep a diary? And you look back at it. My father has a little book, this little, with the spiral from 1960 when he started to work, when he came to America. So he was invited here to a dinner, a birthday party for the Schoenberg's Risen, about 5-6 years ago, whenever. And my father was there, they asked him to speak. So he goes up there, he takes out his little book, and he says, Schoenberg, the Kim's me Geld. You were there, Yossi?
No, but he told me himself the story. Tell me
You
the
owe me
story.
money. And Risen looks at him.
At
What?
the birthday party?
At the birthday party.
He had no shame.
My-
There was no shame.
No, these guys are buddies from back then.
So before Schoenberg had his money.
Yeah.
Way before.
So my
And there's
father,
a lot of compounded
wait.
interest.
They got a lot of guys.
So my father's a Schoenberg. He calls him, as a friend. Remember? He says, State due, I gave you $4, $5, because he was single. Schoenberg was married already. So he says to my father was working for him. At the time, he was, so he says to him, wie darfst du the Geld now? When you get married, I'll give you the money back. Owe me the money. And my father did, but he wrote it down. And he has it as a book, and everyone plots. Another person, Alevsky, I was in Cleveland speaking. I went to see Alevsky. He's 86 years old. He's a wheelchair stroke patient. So I'm talking to him. My father tells me, let me show you. Ich habe auch gegeben Geld. He has it written down in his little book. The point is, these things for family, it's a beautiful thing years later, So that's I want to encourage you to do that. Now we'll just, any comments, questions, anything, and then we'll turn it off. You don't have to be ashamed, but bashful. We're all chavedim here. Yossi, did I leave anything out?
No.
I mean, I wish.
There is an interesting story. I don't know if you know where Rebbe Krinsky, when they inaugurated the Rebbe to be Rebbe, they had this on Eastern Parkway. They had like a little get together. People came in, wished the Rebbe. So he told his father that you should have came. You would have enjoyed it. I know it's a long ride. There's a whole letter he writes to his father
in Boston.
why he didn't come. And he says, and you should just know, he spoke about Mendel Greenbaum on the day of his
I
inauguration.
never knew that.
And there's a letter that Yidel wrote to his dad. that
Yeah?
says- yeah.
You've seen the letter.
I think I once saw
Uh-huh.
it. Yeah, but I didn't copy it.
That's very interesting. I didn't.
Yeah.
That is very interesting to me. And I think
You can
also,
ask-
I
you
think
can
he'll.
ask all the Yidel knows.
I'm gonna try to
What
find
about
out.
Salmon's story the night before you said this? Night before they were going to see us. Someone told me that my brother told me someone told him
Mm-hmm.
that the night before Yechidus Rebbe called.
No, not before he took the Nisias.
What's the story? What does Alman say?
That he called him in Europe. He called your grandfather in Europe and said that he's taking a.
That has to be verified. He was in Europe at the time in 1950. Was in Europe already?
Yeah, it was in Germany.
Yeah?
In Germany, yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
And he called him that he's...
In a DP camp or something, and he called the paper.
Kidding me? I would love to verify that. It has to be verified. Such a story has to be verified.
But Yidel has this letter.
Yudla has the letter.
Yeah.
That's very
The Rebbe was talking
interesting.
about him on the day of.
And he didn't he give the rebel some rides on a car? Is that true or not true? Because he had a car, right?
Yeah.
Look, he did, but
He told me an interesting story also that he walked into 770 and he sees someone take like a Gemara, but the Gemara is this way, right? The Gemara is left to right.
right,
And he sees that he lifts it up like an inch
yeah,
and he's going, turns the page. He went like a few Dalfin, but he didn't look at the other side. He didn't look at the back page. He only looked at what was in front of him, what he could see.
Right.
Very quiet way. He didn't want anyone to see, so he did it like this. He didn't look at the back page. So my father didn't know at the time it was the Rebbe, so he went over to someone. So he told him, "This is the Rebbe's son-in-law."
yeah. So the way he's told me the story, he went up, he saw a person he never saw before
Right.
at Mincha,
Right.
who opened up the Gemara. Look, it was like this. Yeah, it's a little surprising because the Rebbe was so makbid during Mincha took into Siddur. But whatever the case, he was like this, and he didn't know who he is.
Yeah.
After Mincha, he went over to Reb Shmuel. Reb Shmuel was the Mashpia, Reb Shmuel Levitten. And he says, das is the Rebbe's, the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe's, Eden, jüngste Eden, the Ramash. Now, he remembered the first time he saw him. Anyway, Zalaham Alicht in Gan Eden, and together with my good friend Leibish, Zalaham Alicht in Gan Eden, we should sometimes speak about Leibish. He was a very interesting individual, to say the least. As a chalutz, a real chalutz, and he learned, a pioneer, a fighter, a fighter for Eretz Yisrael. He was a real
First line.
yeah, and he learned. He knew Tanakh. I spoke to him in Tanakh. He told me he was. Yeah. Anyway, Dave should help. We should only have it. You guys should have your atzlocha, the mailam, I'm sure. Everyone should get married or single. Those that are single should find a shidduch, and those that are married should have either shechsidish nachas and their children, or grandchildren. And we should take him sechet to go to Shlem B'Karav Mamish.
Oh man.
Taking it off.
Also, the shir was sponsored today. Village was my grandmother, Kegali Babas Ari Mordechai.
Shalom and Aliyah.
Amen.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.